After 6 grueling months on the oil rig, I was finally heading home. The monotonous hum of the helicopter blades was a familiar sound, almost comforting in its consistency. Each time I left the rig, I felt like a part of me stayed behind, buried beneath layers of steel and crude oil. But this time, an unfamiliar sense of dread gnawed at my gut. As the chopper descended, the sprawling cityscape gave way to the familiar sight of my quiet suburban neighborhood. I had always found solace in the predictability of these streets, the neatly trimmed lawns, and the familiar faces. Today, though, something felt off. The usually comforting monotony was tinged with a sense of foreboding. I should have felt elation upon seeing my house, the sanctuary I had built with my own hands. Instead, I was struck by the sight of a luxury car parked in the driveway. It was sleek, black, and screamed opulence. My mind raced, and a seed of suspicion took root. As I stepped out of the cab, my heavy boots crunching on the gravel, I noticed the curtains twitch. Emma was at the door before I reached it, her smile a little too bright. "Welcome home, Jack," she said, wrapping her arms around me in a hug that felt oddly distant. "Whose car is that?" I asked, not even attempting to hide the suspicion in my voice. Emma's smile faltered for a split second before she recovered. "Oh, it's mine. I decided to treat myself. You've been working so hard, and I thought it was time for a change." Her explanation didn't sit right with me. Emma was always practical, never one for extravagant purchases. My gut twisted. "With what money?" I pressed, trying to keep my tone light, but failing miserably. "Oh, I've been doing some freelance work online. It's been quite successful," she replied, brushing off my concern with a wave of her hand. "Come inside. You must be tired." Inside, the house looked the same as always, but there was an undercurrent of something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I felt like a stranger in my own home. The 6 months away had always been tough, but this was different. The luxury car, the nonchalant explanation, Emma's too bright smile. It all felt wrong. As I unpacked, I couldn't shake the unease. My mind drifted back to the oil rig, the relentless work, the camaraderie, and the tragic accident that had claimed the lives of my friends. Their faces haunted me, especially in the quiet moments. I had promised myself to make every second count, to cherish my time with Emma. But now, I wasn't sure what I was coming home to. Dinner was a quiet affair. Emma chatted about her online work, but I could barely focus. My thoughts kept drifting to the car, the money, and the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. I needed fresh air and some clarity. As I walked through the neighborhood, I noticed Tommy Banks, our reclusive neighbor, sitting on his porch. He gave me a nod, his eyes following me with an intensity that made me uneasy. Tommy had always been a bit of an enigma, watching everything and everyone. "Evening, Jack," he called out, his voice low and gravelly. "Welcome back." "Thanks, Tommy," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Everything all right around here?" Tommy's gaze lingered on me for a moment before he spoke. "Things are never quite what they seem, are they?" He gave a small, cryptic smile and turned back to his house. His words echoed in my mind as I continued my walk. What did he mean by that? Was it just Tommy being his usual cryptic self, or was there something more? I had a feeling I was about to find out, and I wasn't sure I was ready for the answers. The next morning, the unsettling feeling from the previous day lingered like a dark cloud. Emma was already up, bustling around the kitchen. She greeted me with the same forced brightness that had unsettled me the day before. I tried to shake off the feeling, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. After breakfast, I decided to take a closer look at the luxury car. Emma was in her home office, supposedly working on her freelance projects. I approached the car, its sleek surface reflecting the morning sunlight. I peered inside, noting the pristine leather seats and the high-end features that seemed worlds away from our usual lifestyle. Just as I was about to walk back to the house, Tommy Banks appeared at the edge of our driveway. He had a knack for showing up at the most unexpected times, his presence always unsettling. He leaned casually against the fence, his eyes fixed on me. "Nice car," Tommy remarked, his tone carrying an edge of sarcasm. "Quite a step up from the old sedan." I nodded, unsure of how much to reveal. Yeah, Emma said she got it with some money she made from freelancing. Tommy raised an eyebrow, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Freelancing, huh? Interesting. He let the word hang in the air, thick with unspoken implications. What are you getting at, Tommy? I asked, my patience wearing thin. Tommy shrugged, his eyes never leaving mine. Just seems like a lot of money for freelance work, that's all. But hey, what do I know? I'm just the nosy neighbor. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. I watched him go, feeling a mix of frustration and curiosity. Tommy's cryptic comments only added to my growing suspicion. Back inside, I decided to snoop around Emma's office while she was out running errands. Her office was neat, almost too neat, with everything perfectly in its place. I rummaged through the drawers, careful not to disturb anything too obviously. I found nothing unusual, just the usual office supplies and paperwork. I was about to give up when I noticed a small, locked drawer at the bottom of her desk. I searched for a key, my heart pounding in my chest. Finally, I found it taped under the desk. I unlocked the drawer and pulled it open, my hands shaking. Inside was a stack of receipts, all from high-end restaurants and luxury stores. My stomach dropped as I recognized the names, places we'd never been to together. My mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. The receipts dated back months, covering the entire time I'd been away on the rig. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. I had to confront Emma, but I needed more information first. I decided to take pictures of the receipts with my phone, making sure I had evidence. I locked the drawer and returned everything to its place, my mind spinning with possibilities. When Emma returned, I tried to act normal, but the tension was palpable. I couldn't look at her without wondering what else she was hiding. Dinner was a strained affair, with awkward silences punctuating our conversation. I kept thinking about the receipts, the luxury car, and Tommy's cryptic comments. That night, as I lay in bed next to Emma, sleep eluded me. My mind raced with questions and doubts. I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was unraveling, one thread at a time. The woman I thought I knew, the life I thought we shared, it all felt like a lie. I resolved to dig deeper, to find out the truth no matter what. I had to know what was really going on, even if it meant facing a reality I wasn't ready for. The cold welcome I had received was just the beginning, and I had a feeling things were about to get a lot more complicated. The days that followed felt like walking through a fog. My suspicions about Emma gnawed at me, making it hard to focus on anything else. I found myself replaying every conversation, every interaction, searching for signs I might have missed. The luxury car, the receipts, Tommy's cryptic comments, they all pointed to something I couldn't yet see. One afternoon, while Emma was out running errands, I decided to take a closer look at her online activities. She had mentioned her freelance work, but I knew nothing about it. I needed to find out more. I logged into our shared computer and started digging through her browser history and emails. Emma's online presence was far more extensive than I had imagined. Under a pseudonym, she had built a successful online business, selling handmade jewelry and artisanal crafts. The sales figures were impressive, explaining the sudden influx of money. But there was something else, something that didn't quite add up. I noticed a series of encrypted emails from an unknown sender. The subject lines were vague, and the content was indecipherable. I copied the emails onto a flash drive, intending to find someone who could decrypt them. As I continued to sift through her files, I stumbled upon a hidden folder labeled Expenses. Inside the folder were detailed spreadsheets tracking every transaction, every sale, and every expense. I noticed a pattern: regular, large withdrawals labeled as consulting fees. The amounts were significant, far exceeding what I would expect for freelance work. My gut told me these withdrawals were connected to the receipts I had found. I needed to know more about these consulting fees. I printed out the spreadsheets and the encrypted emails, feeling a mix of dread and determination. This was my first solid clue, a breadcrumb leading me toward the truth. That evening, I tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. Emma seemed oblivious, chatting about her day and her latest projects. I forced myself to nod and smile, biding my time. I needed to confront her, but I had to be strategic. I couldn't afford to tip my hand too soon. The next morning, I decided to visit an old friend, Joe Thompson, who worked in IT security. If anyone could help me decrypt the emails, it was Joe. We met at a local diner, the smell of coffee and fried food filling the air. "Long time no see, Jack," Joe said, clapping me on the back. "What brings you here?" I slid the flash drive across the table. "I need your help, Joe. Can you decrypt these emails for me?" Joe raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. He plugged the flash drive into his laptop and began typing away. After a few minutes, he looked up, a puzzled expression on his face. "These emails are heavily encrypted," he said, "but I can crack them. It'll take some time, though." "Do whatever it takes," I replied, my voice edged with urgency. "I need to know what's in them." Joe nodded, his fingers flying across the keyboard. As he worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the verge of uncovering something big. The encrypted emails, the mysterious consulting fees. It all pointed to a deeper, more sinister secret. After what felt like an eternity, Joe finally looked up, his face pale. "Jack, you're not going to like this." "What is it?" I asked, my heart pounding. "These emails, they're not just about business. They're detailed communications between Emma and someone named the broker, discussing transactions and other arrangements." "Other arrangements?" I repeated, my mind racing. "What kind of arrangements?" Joe hesitated, then continued, "It looks like Emma has been involved in some sort of scheme. The broker mentions meetings, payments, and diversions." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Diversions? Was I one of those diversions? Was my absence being used as a cover for something much darker? I thanked Joe and left the diner, my mind spinning with possibilities. The first clue had opened a Pandora's box of questions and fears. As I drove home, I knew one thing for certain. I had to dig deeper, no matter where it led me. The truth was out there, and I was determined to find it. I returned home from my meeting with Joe, the weight of his revelations pressing down on me like a lead blanket. The encrypted emails had blown open a door I wasn't sure I was ready to walk through. Emma was involved in something deep, something dangerous, and I had to confront her. That evening, I waited until after dinner, the tension between us palpable. Emma sensed my mood but continued to act normal, chatting about her day and her latest projects. I could barely focus, my mind replaying Joe's words over and over. "Emma, we need to talk," I said finally, my voice steadier than I felt. She looked up, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "What is it, Jack?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I know about the consulting fees. I know about the encrypted emails. Who is the broker, and what kind of business are you really involved in?" For a moment, her face went completely blank. Then, like a mask slipping, she recovered, her eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about, Jack? You've been snooping through my things?" "I had to," I replied, my anger rising. "You've been hiding things from me. This isn't just about some extra money from freelance work. What are you really doing, Emma?" She stood up, her expression hardening. "You had no right to go through my private emails. This is my business, Jack. I'm making money to support us. Why can't you just trust me?" "Trust you?" I repeated, incredulous. "How can I trust you when you're lying to my face? Who is the broker, Emma?" She looked away, her hands trembling slightly. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "The broker is just a business contact. The consulting fees are legitimate. You're blowing this all out of proportion." I could see the cracks in her facade, the way her eyes darted, searching for a way out. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice low and steady. "Joe decrypted the emails. I know about the meetings, the payments, the diversions. What are you hiding?" Emma's face flushed with anger and fear. "You don't understand, Jack. You don't know what it's like to be here, alone, for months on end. I had to find a way to keep myself occupied, to make something of myself, and that involves secret meetings and encrypted emails." I shot back. "What are you really doing, Emma?" She took a step towards me, her eyes blazing. "Fine. You want the truth? The broker is Michael. He's been helping me expand the business, making connections, setting up deals. The consulting fees are his cut. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd react like this. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Michael, my own brother. The pieces started to fall into place. The luxury car, the expensive dinners, the hidden transactions. Michael, I repeated, my voice hollow. You've been working with Michael behind my back? Yes, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. I knew you'd be furious. But it's not what you think. It's just business. Just business? I echoed, the rage boiling inside me. How long has this been going on, Emma? How long have you been lying to me? She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. It's been months, Jack, but it was never meant to hurt you. I just wanted to build something for us, for our future. I turned away, my mind racing. My own brother, conspiring with my wife, behind my back. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound I had ever known. I can't do this, I said quietly. I need some air. I left the house, the cool night air hitting me like a slap. The world felt like it was spinning out of control. I had come home hoping for peace and found only chaos. As I walked aimlessly through the neighborhood, Tommy's words echoed in my mind. Things are never quite what they seem. The confrontation had answered some questions, but opened up so many more. What was Michael's true role in all of this? How deep did their deception go? And most importantly, what was I going to do next? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days following the confrontation were a blur. Emma and I barely spoke, the silence between us growing thicker and more oppressive. The revelation that Michael, my own brother, was involved in Emma's secret dealings had shaken me to the core. I needed answers, and I knew I couldn't get them from Emma alone. I decided to confront Michael directly. It wasn't an easy decision, but I couldn't let the suspicion fester any longer. I drove to his house, my mind racing with anger and betrayal. Michael lived in a modern, glass-fronted home that screamed success, a stark contrast to my own modest abode. Michael greeted me with his usual charm, but I could see the flicker of unease in his eyes. "Jack, what a surprise," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "What brings you here?" I didn't waste any time. "Cut the crap, Michael. I know about the broker. I know you've been working with Emma behind my back. What the hell is going on?" Michael's face tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Let's sit down," he said, motioning to the sleek leather couch in his living room. We sat across from each other, the tension between us palpable. "Emma told me everything," I continued, my voice low and hard. "About the consulting fees, the encrypted emails. How long has this been going on?" Michael sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Jack, it's not as bad as you think. Yes, I've been helping Emma with her business, but it's purely professional. She needed connections, and I have them." "Professional?" I scoffed. "Encrypted emails, secret meetings, that doesn't sound professional to me. What aren't you telling me?" He hesitated, his eyes darting away. "All right, there's more to it. Emma's business, it's connected to some high-stakes deals. The broker, that's me, facilitates these deals. It's not illegal, but it's sensitive. We needed to keep it under wraps." "Sensitive?" I repeated, my anger rising. "What kind of deals are we talking about, Michael?" He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Art deals, Jack. High-end, exclusive art deals. Emma has a talent for sourcing and creating pieces that sell for a lot of money. But the market is competitive and cutthroat. We had to keep things quiet to protect our interests." I stared at him, trying to process his words. "Art deals?" It sounded plausible, but it didn't explain everything. "And the diversions? The payments? What about those?" Michael sighed again. "Diversions were to throw off competitors. Payments were to ensure certain people stayed out of our way. It's all part of the business." Part of the business. The phrase echoed in my mind. It explained some things, but left so many questions unanswered. "And you didn't think to tell me? Your own brother?" "Emma insisted," he said quietly. "She was afraid you'd react like this, that you wouldn't understand. She didn't want to worry you while you were away." I felt a mix of anger and sadness. "Worry me? She's been lying to me, Michael. Both of you have. How am I supposed to trust either of you?" Michael looked genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, Jack. I should have told you. But Emma, she's been through a lot. She wanted to prove herself, to make something of her own. I was just trying to help. The weight of his words settled over me. Emma's secret life, Michael's involvement. It was all so much to take in. I need some time to think, I said finally, standing up. This is a lot to process. Michael nodded, standing as well. Take all the time you need. But remember, Jack, it was never about hurting you. We were just trying to build something. I left Michael's house, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The secrets were unraveling, but the more I uncovered, the more complicated everything became. Emma's hidden business, Michael's role, the encrypted emails. It was all part of a web that I was only just beginning to understand. As I drove home, I couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface. I had started this journey seeking the truth, and now that I was finding it, I wasn't sure if I could handle what it revealed. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stop now. I had to see this through, no matter where it led me. The tension at home was suffocating. Emma and I moved around each other like ghosts, our interactions minimal and strained. I was determined to dig deeper, to uncover the full extent of what was happening. Michael's explanations had only scratched the surface, and I needed to know everything. One evening, after Emma had gone to bed, I found myself sitting in the dim light of my study, the stack of printed spreadsheets and decrypted emails spread out before me. I combed through the documents again, looking for anything I might have missed. The consulting fees, the transactions, the cryptic mentions of meetings and payments. It all painted a picture of a complex and clandestine operation. But one email caught my eye, one I hadn't paid much attention to before. It mentioned a special project and a name that sent a chill down my spine, Project Aurora. There were no details, just a note that Michael and Emma were to meet with someone named Victor to discuss logistics. Who was Victor, and what was Project Aurora? My mind raced with possibilities, each one more unsettling than the last. I decided to reach out to Tommy Banks. He had a way of knowing things, a knack for uncovering secrets. If anyone could help me, it was him. The next morning, I knocked on Tommy's door. He answered with his usual guarded expression, his eyes narrowing slightly when he saw me. "Jack," he greeted me. "What brings you here?" "I need your help," I said bluntly. "There's something going on with Emma and Michael. I found a reference to something called Project Aurora. Do you know anything about it?" Tommy's eyes widened, just for a moment, before he masked his reaction. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let me in. "We need to talk." Inside, Tommy led me to his cluttered living room. He motioned for me to sit, and then pulled out a thick file from a drawer. "Project Aurora," he said, flipping through the pages. "I've heard whispers about it. It's some sort of high-stakes operation, but details are scarce." "Whispers?" I asked, leaning forward. "What kind of whispers?" Tommy handed me a document from his file. It's been linked to art trafficking and money laundering. Big players, lots of money involved. If Emma and Michael are tied up in this, it's serious. Art trafficking and money laundering. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. Why would they get involved in something like this? Tommy shrugged. Greed, ambition, desperation. Who knows? People get involved in dangerous things for all sorts of reasons. But if they're in deep, you need to be careful. These aren't people you want to cross. I felt a surge of anger and fear. What do I do, Tommy? How do I find out more? Tommy sighed, rubbing his temples. You need to find Victor. He's the key. If you can get to him, you might get the answers you need. But be careful, Jack. These people play dirty. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and fears. Emma and Michael were involved in something far darker than I had imagined. Project Aurora, art trafficking, money laundering. It was a world I didn't understand, a world that had somehow entangled my family. I decided to confront Emma again, but this time, I needed a plan. I needed to catch her off guard, to make her reveal the truth. I spent the next few days gathering more information, piecing together the puzzle. I followed her discreetly, noting her movements, her meetings. Each piece of the puzzle led me closer to Victor. Then, one evening, I saw her meeting with a tall, imposing man at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. I took a picture and sent it to Tommy. His reply was immediate. It was Victor. My heart pounded as I watched them from a distance, their conversation animated and intense. I knew I had to act, but I had to be smart. I couldn't confront them outright. Not yet. I needed more information, more leverage. The plot was thickening, and I was caught in the middle of it. I was determined to unravel the truth, no matter what it took. As I walked away from the cafe, I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined, and the consequences of failure were unthinkable. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to see this through, for my sake and for the truth. Days turned into a tense game of cat and mouse. Emma continued her clandestine meetings, and I continued to shadow her every move. The weight of what I had discovered about Project Aurora bore down on me, but I was determined to see it through. I needed one last piece of the puzzle, one final clue to tie everything together. One evening, Emma received a phone call while we were having dinner. Her face paled as she listened, nodding silently before excusing herself. I watched her retreat to her office, closing the door behind her. My curiosity piqued. I decided to eavesdrop. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to catch snippets of her conversation. "Yes, Victor, I understand." "No, he doesn't suspect anything. The shipment is scheduled for next week. I'll handle it." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The shipment. This had to be related to Project Aurora. I needed to find out more, and quickly. I waited until she finished her call and left the house for another meeting. Then, I slipped into her office, determined to find something concrete. I rifled through her desk, careful not to disturb anything too obviously. My eyes landed on her laptop, still open and logged in. I quickly navigated through her emails and found a thread between her and Victor. They discussed the shipment in veiled terms, but one email stood out. It contained an address and a date. Next Tuesday at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. This was it. The final clue I needed. The address, the date. It all pointed to a major operation, and I was going to be there to see it unfold. I printed the email and tucked it into my pocket. As I was about to leave, I noticed a small, locked drawer I hadn't seen before. Remembering the key I found last time, I quickly unlocked it. Inside was a ledger, filled with detailed records of transactions, shipments, and payments. It was a meticulous record of their illicit activities, the smoking gun I had been searching for. I took photos of every page, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and determination. I left the office, my mind racing. I had the evidence I needed, but I couldn't confront Emma or Michael directly, not yet. I needed to catch them in the act, to see the full scope of Project Aurora. I decided to stake out the warehouse on the date mentioned in the email. I would see this through to the end. The day of the shipment arrived, and I parked my car a safe distance from the warehouse, hidden from view. I watched as unmarked trucks arrived, men unloading crates and moving them inside. Among them, I spotted Emma and Michael, their faces tense with concentration. As night fell, the activity increased. More trucks, more crates, more men. I watched through binoculars, documenting everything. My pulse quickened as I saw Victor arrive, his presence commanding and authoritative. This was it, the heart of Project Aurora. I was about to call the authorities when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Emma and Michael weren't just overseeing the operation, they were orchestrating it. Emma gave orders with a precision I had never seen before, her demeanor cold and calculating. Michael moved with a confidence that spoke of deep involvement. I snapped photos, my hands shaking. This was beyond anything I had imagined. They were deeply embedded in this world, far more than just passive participants. I knew I had to act, but I needed to be smart. I called Tommy, briefing him quickly on what I had found. He promised to contact a trusted detective he knew, someone who could handle this discreetly. As I waited for the authorities to arrive, I felt a mix of dread and relief. The final clue had led me to the truth, but it was a truth that shattered everything I thought I knew about Emma and Michael. I watched as the detective and his team moved in, apprehending everyone involved. The operation was swift and efficient, the culmination of my weeks of investigation. Emma and Michael were led away in handcuffs, their faces a mix of anger and resignation. As they passed by me, Emma's eyes met mine, a silent plea hidden in their depths. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy. The web of lies and deceit had finally unraveled, and the truth was laid bare. As the night drew to a close, I stood outside the warehouse, the weight of the past weeks pressing down on me. The final clue had led me to the heart of Project Aurora, but it had also torn my life apart. I knew there were difficult days ahead, but for now, I allowed myself a moment of bittersweet victory. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. The aftermath of the warehouse bust left me numb and hollow. Emma and Michael were taken away, their faces etched with betrayal and despair. I had exposed their dark dealings, but the victory felt hollow. My family was in ruins, and I was left to pick up the pieces. Little did I know, the biggest shock was still to come. The next morning, I received a call from Tommy. "Jack, we need to talk." "Meet me at the diner in an hour," he said, his voice unusually tense. I agreed, my curiosity piqued and a sense of foreboding settling in my chest. When I arrived at the diner, Tommy was already seated in a corner booth, a stack of papers spread out in front of him. He looked up as I approached, his expression grim. "Jack, there's something you need to see," he said, pushing a document towards me. I picked it up and scanned the contents. It was a contract detailing the terms of Emma's involvement with Project Aurora. But one clause stood out, making my blood run cold. In the event of discovery or arrest, all assets and operations will be transferred to Sarah Whitmore? Tommy nodded. Sarah Whitmore. Ring any bells? I shook my head, my mind racing. No. Who is she? Tommy leaned back, his eyes narrowing. She's the woman Emma's been planning to run away with. They've been in this together from the start. Emma wasn't just trying to make a name for herself. She was setting up a new life entirely, without you or Michael. The revelation hit me like a freight train. Emma and another woman? A secret plan to escape and start over? It seemed too surreal, too twisted to be true. But the evidence was right in front of me. Emma and Sarah have been partners in this from the beginning, Tommy continued. Sarah's been the silent partner, handling the logistics and the money laundering. When everything fell apart, Emma planned to disappear with her, leaving you and Michael to deal with the fallout. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal. Why didn't she tell me? Why go to such lengths to hide this? Fear, Tommy replied. Fear of your reaction, fear of losing everything. She thought she could control it, but it spiraled out of her grasp. I sat back, trying to process the bombshell Tommy had just dropped. Emma, my wife of 20 years, had not only been involved in illegal activities with my brother, but was planning to leave us both for another woman. It was a betrayal on a level I hadn't even imagined. Tommy slid another document across the table. There's more. This is Sarah's background. She's been involved in several high-profile art heists across the country. Emma got in way over her head. I glanced through Sarah's profile, noting the numerous aliases and criminal activities. She was a master manipulator, and Emma had fallen under her spell. My mind reeled with the implications. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger, caught up in a web of deceit and crime. So what do I do now? I asked, my voice hollow. Tommy leaned forward, his eyes intense. You need to protect yourself, Jack. Cooperate with the authorities. Give them everything you have on Emma and Sarah. And then, you need to move on. This life, these lies, they can't define you. I nodded, feeling a mix of resolve and despair. The unexpected twist had thrown my world into chaos, but I couldn't let it destroy me. I had to pick up the pieces and rebuild, one step at a time. As I left the diner, the weight of the revelations pressed down on me, but I felt a glimmer of hope. The truth was out, and while it was painful, it was also liberating. Emma's betrayal had cut deep, but it had also set me free. Free from the illusions I had clung to, free to create a new life on my own terms. The aftermath of the scandal had been devastating, but it had also opened the door to a future I could shape with my own hands. The days following Emma and Michael's arrest were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. The authorities had everything they needed to dismantle Project Aurora, thanks to the evidence I had gathered. But while justice was being served, I was left to grapple with the shattered remains of my life. Emma and Michael were facing serious charges. The once strong facade of our family was in tatters, and the media was having a field day with the scandal. Reporters camped outside my house, and the phone rang incessantly with calls from journalists seeking a comment. I felt like my private hell had become a public spectacle. I spent most of my time in the quiet of my home, avoiding the prying eyes of the world. Tommy was a constant presence, offering support and a much-needed distraction from the chaos. His friendship was a lifeline in those dark days, grounding me when everything else seemed to be falling apart. One evening, as we sat in the dim light of my living room, Tommy handed me a letter. "This came for you today," he said quietly. I took the envelope, recognizing Emma's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, my heart pounding in my chest. "Jack, I know you must hate me right now, and I don't blame you. I deserve every bit of your anger and disappointment. I wanted to explain myself, not to seek forgiveness, but to offer you some closure. When you left for the oil rig each time, I felt an overwhelming loneliness. Sarah came into my life at a time when I was vulnerable, and she offered me a sense of purpose and excitement I hadn't felt in years. I got swept up in her world, in the thrill of the art deals and the money. It wasn't just about the business, it was an escape. I never meant for things to go this far. I thought I could keep my two lives separate, but they collided in the worst possible way. I know I've destroyed everything we built together, and for that, I am truly sorry. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to move on and find happiness. You deserve that, Jack." Emma. I read the letter twice, trying to process the words. It was a feeble attempt at an apology, but it did little to alleviate the pain. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope, feeling a mix of sadness and anger. Tommy watched me carefully. "What are you going to do now, Jack?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "I don't know, Tommy. I need to find a way to move forward, but it's hard to see past the wreckage right now." He nodded, understanding. "Take it one day at a time. You've been through hell, but you're still standing. That counts for something." In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I cooperated with the authorities, providing them with everything they needed to bring Project Aurora to justice. Emma and Michael's trial was a media circus, but I avoided the limelight, choosing instead to find solace in small, everyday victories. I started volunteering at a local community center, finding purpose in helping others. It was a small step, but it gave me a sense of direction. Slowly, the fog of despair began to lift, replaced by a determination to forge a new path. I also reconnected with old friends, people I had lost touch with during the years spent working on the oil rig. They offered support and companionship, helping me rediscover the importance of human connection. One evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for so long. The past few months had been a brutal journey, but they had also taught me resilience and strength. Emma's betrayal had cut deep, but it had also set me free. Free from the illusions I had clung to, free to create a new life on my own terms. The aftermath of the scandal had been devastating, but it had also opened the door to a future I could shape with my own hands. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I made a silent promise to myself to live each day with purpose and integrity, to embrace the uncertainty of the future, and to never lose sight of the person I wanted to become. The past was a painful chapter, but it didn't have to define my entire story. The pen was in my hands now, and I was ready to write the next chapter of my life.